It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Yes, it is Fernando right here on your Patio Side Chats with Chaparral. This is the place to be for all your landscaping, gardening tips and advice. That's right. We got another really exciting show today. I'm excited to be here and talk about this and help you out with your yards and your spaces and everything. And I want to talk today about containers and container gardening. You know, you have to water these things with a hose. You're dragging hoses around to water the pots and containers. But they make such a big difference in how your yard looks. It's something really easy that pretty much anyone can do. And I wanted to talk about what the best way to do those things would be so that you have the easiest time and most successful when you do take the time and effort to do these things, that it works out and you're very pleased with the results. It's something very simple you can do for parties, events. You just want to feel good when you come home, for the family, or maybe someone's coming back from a trip or vacation and you just want to spruce it up and have it just feel homey and welcoming. And that's what I love to do for a living. It's what I get to do every day and help people with their yards. And it's, we get to discuss it here on this radio show. So welcome. Let's get right down to it. So I had an idea that came to me when I came into the studio this morning, and I wanted to talk about hose bibs. I mean, who thinks about hose bibs and how they look, or are they, easily accessible? Do you have to traipse through, a bunch of bushes to go back and get to it? Is it convenient, and how do they look? They're very kind of an industrial thing. Most homes already have them coming out of the wall, and they're just utilitarian. But there are such things as decorative hose bibs, and I love them, and they've kind of come and go out of stores, I've noticed, because as I've shopped up and down here on the Central Coast, I see different ones, and I've seen, some with like hummingbirds on there, or ducks and quails and, different butterflies. What else have I seen? Horse heads. It just different types. And they even in the utilitarian, style, there's what they call a gate valve, which spins and spins and spins till it comes up. And then you spin it around and round and round till it goes back down. That's a gate valve. Probably the most common. Also the most commonly to leak and the most commonly seen. So it's the classic, what you expect a hose bib to kind of look like. I like to think out of the box, get something a little different. And in that world, of utilitarian world, there's one called, it's a ball valve, where you actually only turn it, what is that, like 25% of the way. That's a one little movement. It's a 90-degree angle. So you go and with the hose bib, it's completely 100% on, and then you turn it, 25% of a circle and 90 degrees back, and it's turned off completely. So very little movement, much easier to work with, and you can leave it anywhere in between that 90 degrees if you want less pressure or more pressure. So as far as utilitarian style hose bibs go, they're super easy to replace, and the gate valve ones are pretty commonly leak, over time. Even if they only leak when they're on, it's like, doesn't seem like such a big deal, but it's just messy. And, if it doesn't have to waste water or get your feet all wet, or the area around where the hose bib is muddy, it's nice when, even just putting in a new gasket there for the hose itself, making sure it's on there nice and tight, make sure your hose bib doesn't leak. It just, all that provides for such a much better experience. And generally speaking, they should be really easy to take off. So if it should have threads on there, you have to turn the house water off for a minute. So you got to go find your meter, make sure nobody's in the shower, and turn the water off, spin that hose bib off, and you just spin the new one back on. Use some Teflon tape or some sealant or something on there so they don't leak, and screw it back on. As you're screwing it back on, make sure you're watching the threads go in and kind of keep in mind when that last turn's going to be so you can get it nice and straight when you finish. But it's a really simple project to do. If you can find a decorative hose bib and go around your house and replace the existing or leaky hose bibs with something pretty and nice. It's the part that you touch, in your landscaping. And when we go out and do it and we're going to put in a whole new landscape, I'll ask the customer, would you like extra hose bibs? Do you want them throughout the yard? Would it be more convenient to have one here or there or wherever? And, you can have that done, or you can do it yourself. Pretty simple project to add a hose bib in, digging a trench, running a pipe. You can use a 4x4 post to come up out of the ground and attach that sprinkler pipe to the post to put your hose bib on there. I don't like white PVC pipe coming up. So if you can swing it, it's better to have copper pipe with a brass, elbow on there with a thread so you can screw it on. It looks really nice. The 4x4 post even has kind of a rustic, look to it. You can get a post cap to put on top of the 4x4 post. That's a hose bib. That's my favorite kind of hose bib, with a 4x4 post, copper pipe coming up, the brass 90. Well, the ones I like to buy, they have the little ears on them, so you could screw 2 screws to the post and attach it there without needing a clamp, and then put a decorative hose bib on there, a duck or a hummingbird or something. And man, a simple thing, but it really makes a difference. And it makes taking care of containers and things much easier when you have a really, I don't like really long hoses. If you're finding yourself having to get like 100-foot hose, even 75-foot hose, you need more hose bibs. I'd rather have a 25-foot hose nearby with a hose bib. It's a much easier to roll out and roll it back up. Also, having said that, what about the hose itself? Who wants to look at a hose on the ground rolled up? Hose pots, very a great idea, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be an actual hose pot. I bought one, a big old frog, concrete frog one with a lid, and you roll the hose up in there and put the lid on, and you can't even see the hose at all. Totally gone. It's got a hole in the back for the back end of the hose to come out and attach to the hose bib. I mean, you see that part a little bit, but they make specific hose pots with that hole in there to get out. But you don't have to limit yourself to that, because there's not usually a whole lot of selection for actual hose pots. I don't know if they're just not that common or you don't see them, but when you can just use a regular pot, even any container that the hose would fit in, and just pull it out. That's what I did in my backyard. I just bought a regular pot, and it was a nice ceramic pot. I like the Italian clay better than the Mexican clay. It has a tendency to kind of fall apart over time and kind of slough off. It's kind of sandy, grainy looking on the outside over time. But I got just a nice, and they're not cheap, but I just really like the look of a pot near a hose bib, a nice looking decorative hose bib, and the hose is inside there, so you don't necessarily see it. Also keeps it out of the mud, keeps it a little bit cleaner, and you can just rinse out the pot and rinse off the hose every once in a while, and it provides for a really nice experience. And, a lot of the planter beds these days and things, we're using drip systems, and I use drip like no other. I mean, because it's efficient. You put the little drip emitters on each side of the plant. It doesn't water around the plant, keeps the weeds down. But also, in the same regard of that, by not watering around the whole plant and getting the whole area wet, I think the plants don't do as well. They're not going to be as vibrant. So watering, even just, let's say you had no pots and you had all these plants with drip system in it, I still recommend for our clients to water with the hose on the planters a couple times, 2-3 times a year, and really just soak everything down, soak all the area down. So the hoses and hose bibs are a necessary element of your landscape. They're a part of it. They're there. Why not have them as functional as can be, as convenient as can be? And so I wanted to, talk about that and kind of focus on that. Also, when it comes to pots and things, those, to me, it's just the simplest project to really vamp up the yard. and make it look nice. I think of a personal story of my own, that we had a celebration, my mother-in-law's birthday. We were going to have everybody come over to our house and celebrate it. And our yard looks fine. I cleaned it up and swept up and mowed and, picked up having everything kind of look nice and neat and tidy. But I wanted something a little special. I didn't want to create a whole new landscape project and go and, get some bark or plants or who knows, whatever I would want to do. But so I just thought, okay, let's just get some more pots. I already have some pots with succulents in them, and we'll talk about some varieties and what to plant. And I saw these geraniums that had these beautiful dark red. They're called Caliente Fire geraniums. And, geraniums is kind of a run-of-the-mill plant, I guess. You see them all the time. They've been around forever. But this Caliente Fire was just really almost like a blue-based red. It was just gorgeous, and it just made me happy just looking at it. It was so bright, and I thought, okay, cheery. That's what I want. That's what I want to put in around that space without having to plant in the ground to get a shovel out or run the drip line to it or whatever. And so I just got some little pots, and you know what? I didn't even plant them in there. I didn't have enough time, like the party's coming up, whatever. I just stuck the 1 gallon geraniums in these pots, put them out like around, I don't know, I had maybe 7, 8 of them. Put a couple by the door, a couple over all by the tables we had set up there. We had some umbrellas out there. I have a little shed. I put a couple over by the shed. And it just was, I don't know, it just made like a big difference. And it was just something really simple and easy. And a couple of them after the party made it into some bigger pots. Because that's one thing I want to talk about too, is the size of the pots, the type of soil that you would use in containers, there is a difference, and it's going to really change the experience that you have if you don't choose, the right soil and the right size of pot and the right plants. But all of them didn't make it. I would have never been able to keep them alive in just the 1 gallon container or in those small pots. So a couple of them I planted into bigger pots out front, and they're still there today. This is years later. I don't remember how long ago that party was, and they just keep growing and growing. I don't really want geraniums, in my landscaping and in the ground, but in the pots, they're wonderful. And they were like these cobalt blue ceramic pots, where it looks kind of like things are dripping down the side. And those classic round geranium leaves with that bright red. It's just stunning. So I love containers. Actually, the containers are inside my planters. They're not even on top of hardscape. I just stuck them out there, and they just kind of stayed there. So let's talk about containers, container sizes, types of soils that you would want to use in there, and some plants. I'm going to give you some ideas on that as well. When it comes to pots, bigger is better. It's much easier to keep watered, and the roots will have plenty of space to grow. Sometimes small plants won't even know they're in a pot if it's big enough. So, and size-wise, it's kind of hard to give you an idea of size over the radio, but just imagine like a whiskey barrel being like a really large pot and something you could put like a 15-gallon size shrub in. If you know what 15-gallon size plants are, most people get the 5-gallon, 1 gallon. 5-gallon size pots would fit into, maybe like an 18-inch container. The whiskey barrel would be like the biggest, I think, that you'd really need, I don't know if you're any bigger than that. You're like at maybe a shopping center or a mall or something. But for most homes, that's about the biggest you really want to go pot-wise, and unless you're doing something custom. And then you can go maybe to about half the size of a whiskey barrel. Once you like say 18 inches, 16 inches, once you start getting smaller than that, the 12-inch pots or smaller 8-inch, there's not a whole lot of soil there. There's not a whole lot to keep wet. So it becomes very difficult unless you want to go out there every single day watering the pots. In some cases, it can dry out by the afternoon on a hot, sunny day, especially if it's south-facing or west-facing in the afternoon. The containers are raised, so the whole root ball, the whole pot gets really hot, and it can dry out pretty quick. So if you have a water-loving plant in a small pot, you're not going to have a good experience. if you have, a plant that doesn't need a whole lot of water in a big pot, that you can only have to water once a month, eventually once it's rooted in, you're going to have a great experience. Probably the most obvious is succulents would be the number one choice. Anything, and I don't mean cactus necessarily, you can use cactus, but there's tons of succulents that are not cactus that take very, very little water. They'll root into a container beautifully, and they just will last for years and years. I have a lot of succulents in my pots, and they've been there for years, and they look gorgeous. Now, we mentioned geraniums too, of course. There's all types of geraniums, zonal geraniums, ivy geraniums, scented geraniums. So really fun to do with those. Alströmerias come to mind. Peruvian lily. Do amazing in pots. Flowering year-round, very easy to take care of. Grasses. All types of grasses really work well in pots and provide a really nice look. It's that spiky kind of flax or phormium. They're just so simple. One pot, if you choose the color of the containers, we could do a show just on how to choose a container and pair it with the plants. But, use your best judgment. Be creative. Have fun with it, of course. Experiment. Go a little wild, because they're super easy. You can move them. You can replant them if it doesn't work out. Really, really fun. So just the sky's the limit on design. Just take whatever I'm saying with a grain of salt and do anything in pots, really. But I wanted to say that, I know there's some burgundy flax. I know I talked about that cobalt blue, pot would be one idea, but there just can be really striking. Simple is good, and so, but then you can break the rules because annuals do really well. And if you know what annuals are versus perennials, we could, maybe a show on that. But the annuals, meaning annual, like the year, they only last about a year, in most cases 6 to 8 months. Things like marigolds, petunias, pansies, you get the idea. In pots, they can provide a lot of color. I mean, that's what annuals do, is they just bloom their whole life. Lobelia will kind of hang over the side, and things that drape down along the front of the pots, and you could mix. So if you did a grass in the middle, if it were small to begin with, and the big pot and you had a lot of room, you could put a couple 6-packs of annuals around there. Really nice look. Again, the sky's the limit on design, but if you wanted to say you wanted that blue pot with white dianthus, which is a little carnation-y kind of bloom, and then you have this, green grass or burgundy flax, or, just have fun playing with the colors, mix them, and have fun. And so now, the most common misconception, drought-tolerant plants are going to do great in a container because they don't take a whole lot of water. Not true. Again, I'm not saying you can't do it, because do whatever you feel like. I've seen some manzanitas and things in pots that look fantastic. The reason a plant is drought tolerant is because it has a deep, extensive root system. You don't get that in a pot. So plants that don't have deep, extensive root systems, plants with shallow roots, plants that get their moisture and things from the dew and like succulents do, they get their moisture out of the air. They hold most of their moisture in their leaves, in fact, and they have very little roots, which is why they make great container plants. So think about that. If it's a really deep, extensive root system type of plant, probably not going to do well in a pot. Of course, you can do it, but you just adjust the watering and how you water. Okay, I think I blew right by the commercial, so we'll go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, I will want to talk about vines and the soils that we're going to use and some saucers. Okay.
You're listening to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on California's Central Coast. Here on 1240 AM and 99.5 FM, KSMA.
This show is brought to you by Airval Block. Concrete paving stones or pavers are not all created equal. Airval Block pavers are created from a dry mix of gravel, sand, cement, and color. With very little water used, they're super strong. They won't crack or fade. And to be an Airval Block paver, the gravel and sand come from right here on the Central Coast, supporting our local community. Airval Block is the only local manufacturer of concrete masonry products like pavers, mortarless retaining wall blocks. Airval Block products are high quality for peace of mind, and there are many colors to choose from. And if you're not sure which products you need or how to use them, you will always get expert advice from the staff at Airval Block. Products made on the Central Coast for the Central Coast. Visit their fully landscaped outdoor showroom to see the many ways you can use Airval Block products at number 1 Suburban Road in San Luis Obispo, or go online at airvalblock.com.
If you're thinking about installing a new paver patio or paver driveway, check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Serving the Central Coast since 2001, Chaparral Pavers will work with you to get it right and complete the job to your specifications, as customer service is king at Chaparral Pavers. Paver driveways are stylish and durable and guaranteed to never crack. If your old concrete driveway or entryway is a hazardous cracking mess, it's time to call Chaparral Pavers. Go to their website, ilovetocomehome.com. You'll find all the information you need. Check out photographs of past installations and reviews from Central Coast residents who have used Chaparral Pavers. And don't forget, all installations are guaranteed for the life of your home. So check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Chaparral Pavers, they'll make you love to come home. Now, back to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on KSMA.
Yes, and we're back. So we're talking about all things containers, hose bibs, hoses, hose pots, containers. So we had mentioned using decorative hose bibs. So if you can get them and put them on, make those hose bibs look a little bit better, tidying up your hoses and your real hose reels or containers to put the hoses in to keep that decorative and nice and friendly and clean. Also keeping them within a close distance to where you need them so you can have shorter hoses and more hose bibs and put them throughout the yard and have that be nice and convenient. Also, the convenience of planting pots, bringing in fresh color to a nice, neat little project to do and freshen up your home, make your living experience even that much more special, or if it's a special occasion, a party or get-together, family occasion, whatever it might be. Pots just are super fun and easy to spruce up, make things feel fresh and new and fun and taken care of. So let's get back to plants. I wanted to talk about vines. Vines do really well in pots, and sometimes things that get really crazy, a vine that you would never plant in the ground, morning glory, honeysuckle, these things that it's like, oh, I would never plant that in the ground. You can plant them in the pots. They get root bound in the pots, and it constricts their growth. Now, I did that in our kitchen window, faces our driveway. Our neighbor is right there. Every time my wife does the dishes, she's looking across over there at the neighbor. And so I bought what looks like a whiskey barrel. It was about the same size, made out of wood. I got a vine. I got 2 tree stakes, a trellis, and some bacopa plants and some soil. Now, I did want to talk about soil really quick. You want to use well-drained soil, cactus mix, something that water just flows right through. You don't want a heavy soil that's going to hold a lot of water in a container. Otherwise, you may have to amend it in some way. So I took the trellis and I attached it to the 2 stakes. I cut it down to the size that I wanted it. Put that in the container, put my well-drained soil in there, planted the vine in there, and then I put the bacopa around the front to kind of hang over. And I spread out the branches of the vine. They were pretty full, a lot of branches, and I spread them out and tied them off with the tie tape. Instant privacy. So these projects are fun, easy, functional. They can help with privacy. There's so many things, but you do have to water them with the hose and keep them wet and take care of them, and they will give you back all that tenfold. So have a good week. Check us out on Facebook at Chaparral Pavers, and we will see you next week right here on KSMA.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ilovetocomehome.com to find out more, or call 805-588-6600. 6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chat here on KSMA.